Imagine walking into a quiet diner on a cold winter night, only to find a bruised young mother holding her trembling son, whispering, "Please, he hasn't eaten today." A Marine veteran with a past full of scars, a loyal German shepherd trained to protect, and a mother running from a man who was supposed to love her. When she stepped through that door, Jack Coleman thought she was just another customer. But the truth? She was running for her life, and her little boy was the only thing keeping her going. What Jack did next wasn't planned. It wasn't easy, but it was the moment everything changed. For her, for her son, and for him. Because sometimes God sends miracles not as angels from heaven, but as people sitting alone in a diner, waiting for a reason to stand up again. If you believe kindness can save a life, if you believe one decision can rewrite a future, then stay with me for this story. And if it touches your heart, please subscribe and share. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you so much for watching. Early winter in Maple Ridge, a small mountain town in Montana, carried a harsh beauty that not everyone found comforting. The streets were lined with thin layers of melting snow from the night before, and the air carried a biting cold that slipped easily under coats and scarves. Pine trees swayed against the wind, and the sky held a muted gray tone that hinted at another snowfall. On Main Street, Coleman's Grill glowed warmly through frosted windows, its neon sign flickering orange light into the gathering dusk. Inside, the diner smelled of beef stew simmering slowly, butter sizzling on the griddle, and fresh bread warming in the oven. Behind the counter stood Jack Coleman, a 38-year-old former Marine Corps head cook. Jack was tall and broad-shouldered, built from years of hauling gear, sprinting between field stations, and working under pressure in military kitchens. His face was angled and worn, carrying a few faint scars. Nothing dramatic, but enough to hint at years of service and hardship. A short, well-kept beard framed his jaw, and his brown hair was trimmed in the same neat style he'd kept since enlistment. Though his body looked intimidating at first glance, his deep-set dark eyes held a gentle steadiness, the kind that made people feel safe without him saying a word. Jack wasn't a man of many emotions outwardly, but those who knew him understood he was loyal, patient, and quietly protective, traits shaped by deployments that left their imprint on his soul. By the kitchen door rested Rex, Jack's 7-year-old German shepherd. The dog was large, muscular, and carried himself with disciplined alertness. His thick black and tan coat glistened under the diner lights. His ears twitched at every sound, but his eyes, a warm amber, softened whenever Jack spoke. Rex had once served as a military working dog, trained to track, search, and protect, so caution lived in every instinct he had. Yet with children and people in distress, he showed a gentle, almost human compassion. To Jack, Rex wasn't just a dog. He was a partner who had saved his life more than once. The diner was nearly empty, just 2 truckers finishing late lunches, talking quietly in a corner. Jack expected a slow night, another quiet winter evening no different from the last 100. But the bell over the entrance chimed sharply, and a sudden gust of cold air swept in. Jack looked up. Standing in the doorway was a young woman and a small boy. The woman stepped forward first. Emily Brooks, around 30 years old, had a fragile look about her. Her frame was slender, almost too thin, as if she had been skipping meals. Her coat was old and frayed at the edges, offering little protection from the cold. Long chestnut brown hair fell around her face in loose, uneven strands, and her pale skin emphasized the dark bruise forming along her left cheekbone. Her hazel eyes darted around, cautious, apologetic, filled with exhaustion. She held herself, like someone who had spent too long trying not to be noticed. Beside her clung Noah, a 7-year-old boy with sandy blonde hair sticking out from beneath a knit beanie. His brown eyes were full of innocence but also carried a weary, too quiet maturity that children shouldn't have. His clothes were worn and mismatched, and his jacket zipper was broken, leaving his chest exposed to the cold. Still, he stood politely next to his mother, his small hands clutching the hem of her coat. Emily cleared her throat. I'm sorry to bother you," she said softly, her voice trembling but composed. "My son is hungry. Could we stay for a while? Just enough for him to eat something." Jack's eyes flicked from the bruise on her cheek to the thinness of her coat, then to the boy's broken zipper. He said nothing at first, only nodded and gestured toward a booth. "Sit anywhere you like. No one should be out in this cold." Emily hesitated, almost as if she feared being turned away, but she gently guided Noah to a booth near the window. Noah slid into the seat timidly, his eyes roaming curiously around the diner. Rex approached slowly, tail low but friendly. Noah's face lit up just a little when the big dog nudged its head against his small hand. Jack noticed this immediately. "Looks like Rex likes you," he said. Noah whispered, "He's really warm," as his fingers disappeared into the thick fur. When Jack brought a menu over, Emily shook her head quickly. "Just a small bowl of soup for my son, please. I don't need anything." Jack recognized that tone, the quiet, strained pride of someone who had endured too much. He'd heard it in camps overseas, from families trying to hold themselves together. Without commenting, he gave a small nod and walked back to the kitchen. But instead of one small bowl, he prepared a large tray. A generous bowl of beef stew, fresh bread, a grilled cheese sandwich, and a second bowl of soup he pretended not to notice himself placing. When he returned, he set it down with a casual shrug. "New combo meal I'm testing. Needed honest opinions. Thought you two could help me out." Emily blinked in confusion. "But no charge if you don't like it," Jack added before she could argue. Noah was already eating, eager and grateful. As they ate, Jack caught glimpses of Emily's trembling hands, the bruise on her face, and the fear she tried desperately to hide. Finally, when he brought over warm tea, he spoke gently. "Rough night?" Emily stiffened. The tea in her hands quivered. Then, with a breath that seemed to break her chest open, she whispered, "My husband, he drinks. And when he drinks, he—" She touched the bruise unconsciously. "Tonight he threw us out. Noah was terrified. We just ran." Noah lowered his spoon, looking down. Jack felt his throat tighten, not with anger, but with a familiar ache. He'd seen this before. Overseas. Stateside. Pain caused by the people who were supposed to protect. And the boy's quiet fear reminded him of civilians he'd fed during deployments, children who clung to any sign of safety. Jack placed one hand on the table, steady and sure. "You're safe here, both of you." Emily shook her head. "We don't have money, and I don't want to cause trouble." "This isn't trouble," Jack said. "Listen, the diner always needs an extra pair of hands. If you want, you can help here. Cleaning tables, helping customers, and Noah can stay warm while you work." Emily's lips parted in disbelief. "You'd let us stay? After meeting us for 5 minutes?" Jack nodded. "At least stay tonight. Let Noah sleep warm." That's all that matters right now." Emily's eyes filled with tears. She tried to blink away. Noah reached out and touched Rex's head again, as if the dog made everything safer. Jack stood, his voice soft but unshakable. "You and your boy stay here. You're not alone anymore." The morning after Emily and Noah arrived at Coleman's Grill, Maple Ridge woke under a soft veil of frost. Thin crystals clung to windows and railings, glittering faintly as the pale sun tried to break through the cold. Inside the diner, the warmth smelled of cinnamon from the morning rolls Jack baked every dawn, and the quiet sizzle of bacon filled the room long before customers began drifting in. The back room, once a simple storage area, had been quickly converted into a modest living space for Emily and Noah. It wasn't much. A narrow bed Jack had moved from his own guest room, a small dresser, and a thick quilt his mother once made him during his first deployment. But to Emily, it felt like the first safe place she'd slept in years. She woke slowly, startled to realize she wasn't afraid, and saw Noah still curled under the quilt. Rex stretched beside the bed like a vigilant guardian keeping watch through the night. Emily stepped into the main diner quietly, where Jack was already at the stove prepping breakfast. He looked different in the soft morning light, still tall, broad, and rugged, but gentler somehow, as if the early hours stripped away the sternness built from years of service. His forearms flexed as he stirred the pot of oatmeal, and his hair, slightly mussed from the rush of morning prep, made him seem more human and less like the stone-faced Marine she had met the night before. Jack turned when he heard her steps and gave a small nod. "Morning. Coffee?" His voice carried no expectation, no pressure, just simple kindness. Emily nodded, wrapping her fingers around the warm mug he handed her. Noah soon entered the room, still rubbing sleep from his eyes. His thin frame moved slowly, but his face lit up when he saw Rex, who bounded over with a wagging tail. Jack watched the moment quietly, something soft flickering in his eyes. He had seen children cling to dogs in war zones. The way animals gave them a sense of safety, adults often couldn't. Seeing Noah hug Rex with that same trust stirred something old and protective in him. As the days passed, Emily adapted to life in the diner with surprising ease. She proved to be a careful, gentle worker, quiet but efficient. She washed dishes with steady hands, wiped tables between customers, and memorized the regulars' preferences. Her personality was naturally warm, though it had been buried under fear for too long. Now, in safety, the warmth resurfaced. Her hazel eyes softened, and her smile, small at first, became something Noah looked forward to each day. The bruise on her cheek faded slowly, replaced by a faint glow in her complexion as she began eating well again. Jack watched her more than he intended to. He admired how she always checked Noah's sleeves to ensure he wasn't cold, how she tied her hair into a loose knot as she worked, how she said thank you even for the smallest kindness. Her gratitude wasn't the kind born from dependence. It came from a humble, honest nature, something rare and unexpectedly grounding for Jack. The more he observed, the harder it became for him to ignore the quiet affection building beneath his ribs. During slow afternoons, Noah followed Rex around the diner. Jack began teaching him simple tasks, how to toss treats to guide Rex into basic commands, how to pet him firmly but gently, how to read the signals in his ears and tail. Noah soaked it all up, eager and bright. "You're really good at this," Jack told him one day as the boy practiced a stay command. Noah grinned, missing one front tooth. "Maybe I can be like you," he said. "You and Rex." The statement hit Jack harder than he expected. He swallowed, giving a small smile. Takes a lot of heart. But you've got that. Emily overheard moments like these watching from the doorway. Each time she saw Noah look at Jack with admiration, her chest tightened. She hadn't expected kindness from a stranger. Not this level of gentleness. Not this sense of belonging. And Jack's natural way with her son, the patience and subtle warmth, created a feeling she tried to suppress. Something that felt almost like hope. She caught herself glancing at Jack more often, when he laughed with Noah, when he concentrated while chopping vegetables, when he rested a hand on Rex's head as if drawing strength from the animal. Jack, in turn, would catch her gaze occasionally, and there was always a small hesitation in his expression, like he was fighting an instinct he wasn't sure he should follow. One evening after closing, Jack repaired a loose cabinet hinge in the back room. Noah sat nearby coloring, Rex sleeping at his feet. Emily watched Jack work, noticing the strength in his hands and the care in his movements. "You don't have to fix everything," she said softly. Jack glanced over, his brow lifting. "Maybe not, but if I can make life easier for you two, why wouldn't I?" Emily lowered her gaze, blinking back the sudden sting in her eyes. "Because no one ever has," she whispered. Jack paused, then said, "Then maybe that changes now." The air shifted, subtle, delicate. Something unspoken lingered between them, something neither dared name aloud yet. It wasn't romance, not fully. It was tenderness, safety, a possibility neither had allowed themselves to imagine. For the first time in years, Jack felt the presence of a home, not just a diner, not just a routine, a real home. Emily felt it too. And Noah, more than anyone, embraced it without hesitation, clinging to the warmth and stability Jack and Rex provided. In those quiet moments, shared meals, soft conversations, Rex curled up under the table, they formed an unexpected little family. And Jack, who had long believed that the warmth of home had died somewhere between deployments and goodbyes, began to realize something extraordinary. The life he thought he had lost was slowly returning in the shape of a gentle woman, a brave little boy, and a loyal dog who had never left his side. The fog rolled in thick and low that evening, clinging to the streets of Maple Ridge like a warning no one could quite decipher. The diner's windows glowed softly through the haze, the amber lights flickering against the glass as closing time approached. Inside, the last customers had already left, leaving the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the clink of utensils being cleaned, and Rex's steady breathing beneath the counter. Jack wiped down the final table, while Emily swept the floor with Noah sitting nearby, drawing pictures of Rex with crayons Jack had bought him earlier that week. It felt peaceful, the kind of peace none of them took for granted. That peace shattered the moment the entrance door slammed open so violently that the bell above it clattered in protest. The man who stormed in was Mark Brooks, Emily's ex-husband, and even before he opened his mouth, the smell of alcohol hit the room like a punch. Mark was in his mid-30s but looked older from years of drinking. His build was once solid. He had the frame of someone who might have worked construction or heavy labor, but now it looked poorly kept, softened by alcohol and neglect. His face was unshaven, rough with dark stubble, and his eyes were glassy, unfocused, the bloodshot redness giving them a feral edge. The veins in his neck bulged as he scanned the room, and his hands shook with a drunken mix of rage and instability. He stumbled forward, kicking a chair out of his path. "Where's my wife?" he snarled. "Where's my son?" Emily dropped the broom. Her skin turned pale, her fingers curling toward Noah instinctively. Noah's small body pressed into her side, his breathing quick and shallow. Rex sensed danger instantly. The German shepherd rose from beneath the counter, muscles tense, ears pinned forward. A low growl vibrated from his chest, deep and warning. He positioned himself between Emily and Mark, tail stiff, eyes fixed on the intruder with unmistakable intent. Mark ignored the warning. Drunk confidence made him reckless. He stomped toward Emily, shouting incoherently, "You think you can hide from me? You think you can take my kid?" Emily flinched with every step he took, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Noah clung tightly to her, terrified and trembling. Mark reached out and grabbed Emily's arm, yanking her with far more force than necessary. Noah screamed, "Mom!" Rex lunged with a sharp bark, not biting but intercepting, knocking into Mark's leg hard enough to destabilize him. At that exact moment, Jack burst out of the kitchen. Jack didn't shout, didn't hesitate. He moved with the cold precision of someone who had faced real danger before. His posture shifted instantly into the stance of a trained Marine, steady, grounded, controlled. Mark swung wildly toward him, but his movements were sloppy, uncoordinated. Jack caught Mark's wrist mid-swing, twisted it behind his back, and swept his legs out from under, him in one fluid motion. Mark hit the floor with a heavy thud, the air knocked out of him. Jack pressed a knee between Mark's shoulders, locking his arm behind him, immobilizing him with effortless efficiency. "Don't move," Jack said, voice low and deadly calm. Rex stood beside Jack, teeth bared, ready to intervene if Mark tried anything else. From the side of the room, a new voice spoke shakily. It was Sean Miller, a young officer with the Maple Ridge Police Department who often grabbed coffee at the diner. Sean had just stepped inside to pick up a takeaway order he placed earlier. He was in his mid-20s, with sandy brown hair, a clean-shaven face, and a calm, dependable demeanor. He wasn't particularly tall, but he carried himself with quiet confidence. He froze for a moment as he processed the situation, then quickly reached for his radio. "Dispatch, we've got a domestic situation at Coleman's Grill. Suspect restrained. Request backup." Emily collapsed onto her knees beside Noah, pulling him into her arms as tears streamed down her face. Noah pressed his small hands against her cheeks, whispering, "It's okay, Mom. It's okay," though his voice cracked with fear. Jack didn't release Mark until Sean moved in with handcuffs. Mark's drunken rage turned into a slurry of curses and incoherent shouts as he was lifted to his feet. Sean spoke gently to Emily. "Ma'am, you're safe now." But Emily shook her head helplessly. No, he's going to come back. They'll never hold him long." Sean hesitated. He knew she wasn't wrong. Jack stepped closer, placing a steady hand on Emily's shoulder. "You're safe tonight," he said firmly. "And tomorrow, we figure out what comes next." Rex sat pressed against Noah's side, offering warmth and protection with his solid presence. Noah wrapped his arms around Rex's neck, burying his face in the fur. After Mark was taken away, the diner felt painfully quiet. Emily's hands still trembled. Jack crouched in front of her, meeting her eyes. "You're not facing this alone," he told her, slow, deliberate, certain. Emily nodded, though fear still clung tightly to her expression. Because even with Mark gone for now, the truth remained. He would be released, and he would come looking for them again. The day after Mark's arrest, Maple Ridge felt colder than usual, as if the fog from the previous night had settled into everyone's bones. Inside Coleman's Grill, the warmth of the kitchen and the familiar smell of cinnamon rolls did little to ease the tension lingering in the air. Emily sat at one of the back tables, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that had long since gone lukewarm. Her eyes were red and tired, her shoulders slumped, not from physical exhaustion, but from the weight of years she had tried to carry alone. Noah sat beside her, close enough that their arms touched, his small fingers curled around Rex's thick fur for reassurance. The German shepherd never left his side, sensing the fear still trapped inside the boy. Jack stood at the counter, watching them silently. His jaw was clenched, though not out of anger, out of helpless frustration. He hated seeing them like this, hated that Mark still held power over them, even from a holding cell. And when Emily finally lifted her head and met his gaze, he saw the moment she broke. "I can't do it anymore," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I've endured for years because I wanted Noah to have a father. But last night, the way he grabbed me, the way Noah screamed." She shook her head. "I can't let my son grow up thinking that's normal. I can't let him live in fear." Jack moved closer, pulling out the chair across from her. He spoke gently, keeping his voice steady. "You're doing the right thing by protecting him, and you're not doing it alone." He hesitated before adding, "I know someone who can help." Emily looked at him through tired eyes. "Help? Legally? I don't have money. I don't have anything." Jack shook his head. "You don't need money. You just need someone who knows what they're doing." That afternoon, Jack made a call to Captain Raymond Hale, a retired Marine officer he once served under. Hale was a stern-looking man in his early 50s with close-cropped silver hair and a square jaw that seemed carved from granite. His face bore deep lines that hinted at decades of responsibility and discipline, but his blue eyes held a surprising empathy. After retiring, he dedicated his time to helping veterans and families dealing with domestic violence cases, using his network to connect them with legal aid. When Hale arrived at the diner, he brought with him Linda Carter, a well-known family lawyer in the region. Linda was in her 40s, with a lean build, sharp cheekbones, and straight shoulder-length black hair. She dressed in a tailored navy coat and carried an air of calm authority. Her voice was low, steady, and reassuring, the kind of voice that made people feel safe in rooms filled with chaos. Though stern in appearance, her eyes softened whenever she addressed Emily or Noah. They sat together in the booth where Emily and Noah had first eaten just days before. Jack stayed close but gave them enough space to talk privately. Linda listened attentively as Emily recounted the years of abuse, her eyes filled with empathy rather than judgment. She took meticulous notes, every detail recorded with the focus of someone who had handled countless cases like this and fought for every client fiercely. "You've done nothing wrong," Linda said firmly once Emily finished. "And you're not alone. We'll file for divorce and petition for a restraining order immediately. Mark will not be allowed near you or your son." Emily's breath hitched as she whispered, "Thank you." Hale added, "This isn't your burden to carry anymore." His deep voice was stern, but the softness behind it made her shoulders ease. In the days that followed, paperwork was filed, statements recorded, and hearings scheduled. Emily struggled emotionally through the process, but Jack and Rex became the pillars she leaned on. Rex slept every night outside the door of the back room where Emily and Noah stayed, his ears twitching at the slightest noise, his body ready to shield them if necessary. One afternoon, while Jack was fixing a loose cabinet and Emily reviewed documents with Linda, Noah approached him quietly. He tugged gently at Jack's sleeve. "Jack, can I ask you something?" Jack set the screwdriver aside and knelt to Noah's level. "Of course, buddy." Noah hesitated, glancing once toward the door, as if afraid his father might burst through again. Then, with a small but steady voice, he asked, "Can you be part of our family? Like, for real?" The question hit Jack harder than he expected. His breath caught. He looked into Noah's hopeful brown eyes, the same eyes that had been filled with fear only nights before, and felt something warm rise in his chest. Jack rested a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. "You already have a family," he said softly. "Your mom, you, me, and Rex. That's a family right there." Noah smiled, a real, genuine smile, and hugged him tightly. Across the room, Emily paused in her conversation with Linda. She had seen Noah approach Jack, but hadn't expected the depth of their exchange. Her heart tightened with gratitude, tenderness, and something deeper she wasn't ready to name yet. Jack met her eyes, and for a brief moment, neither of them looked away. They stood in that quiet understanding, two adults waiting for chaos to settle before letting hope grow. But the feeling was unmistakable. Something real was forming between them. Something fragile but steady. Something worth protecting. The day of the hearing arrived with an unexpected warmth, the kind that often visited Maple Ridge in late winter just before another cold front rolled in. The courthouse stood tall on a quiet street near the town square, its pale stone exterior softened by sunlight. Inside, Emily sat nervously outside the courtroom, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She wore a simple cream sweater and dark jeans, clothes that made her look soft, calm, and more like herself than she had in years. Beside her was Noah, dressed in a clean plaid shirt Jack had bought him, fidgeting with Rex's collar tag for comfort. Rex sat alert near the boy, his ears twitching at every noise, his presence steady and grounding. Jack stood a few feet away, leaning against the wall with the composed stiffness of a former Marine, but his eyes were focused only on Emily and Noah. He had dressed neatly for the occasion, dark jeans, a charcoal shirt, and a jacket that sharpened his already rugged frame. His features, usually so controlled, held a quiet, protective tension. Captain Hale and lawyer Linda Carter were also there. Linda looked confident as always in a crisp navy suit, her straight black hair neatly tucked behind her ears. Hale, with his imposing build and silver hair, stood like a wall of assurance, stern, loyal, and ready to intervene at the slightest sign of trouble. The hearing itself was brief but heavy. Mark, disheveled and red-eyed, appeared with a court-appointed attorney. His behavior remained volatile, muttering under his breath, glaring at Emily. But the judge, a calm woman in her early 60s named Judge Meredith Lane, kept the room firmly under control. Judge Lane had short silver hair, a pair of delicate glasses perched on her nose, and an expression that balanced kindness with unwavering authority. Her reputation in Maple Ridge was well known. She had zero tolerance for abuse and a deep empathy for victims of domestic violence. After reviewing the files, listening to Emily's testimony, and hearing Noah's brief, halting words about being scared of his father, Judge Lane delivered the ruling succinctly. Emily Brooks was granted full custody of Noah. Mark Brooks was issued a long-term restraining order. Any violation would result in immediate incarceration. A soft gasp escaped Emily as tears slipped down her cheeks, not of fear, but of release. The years of silent suffering finally had an end. When the judge adjourned the session, Emily pulled Noah into her arms, holding him as though she might never let go. Jack watched from a few steps away, his chest tightening with quiet pride and relief. Hale placed a reassuring hand on Jack's shoulder. "You did good, son," he murmured. Jack exhaled slowly. She did the hard part, he replied. Linda walked toward Emily and offered a small, genuine smile. You're free now, she said simply. Later that evening, Jack prepared a small celebration at the diner. The sun had set, and the autumn cold returned. But inside, the warm lights glowed against the windows, welcoming them home. Jack decorated the table with simple touches. A vase with fresh daisies from the local shop, and a handmade card Noah had drawn of their new family, complete with a stick figure Rex in the corner. Emily entered the diner with Noah, her face still flushed from crying earlier, but now carrying a soft glow of peace she hadn't shown in years. Jack stood at the stove, cooking a special meal. Roast chicken with herbs, garlic mashed potatoes, and warm rolls brushed with butter. When he glanced over his shoulder and saw Emily smiling at him, his heart lifted in a way he hadn't felt since before deployment changed everything. She approached slowly, watching him work, her eyes filled with gratitude and something deeper, something gentle and hopeful. You didn't have to do all this, Emily said softly. Jack shrugged, turning the chicken. Maybe I wanted to. Noah played on the floor with Rex, tossing a soft toy bone and giggling when Rex nudged it back toward him. Seeing Noah laugh, really laugh, felt like a miracle after the weeks of fear. When dinner was ready, Jack set the food on the table and sat beside Emily. For a long moment, the three of them simply ate, quietly enjoying the warmth, the safety, the simple joy of being together. Emily placed her hand gently over Jack's. You saved us, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Not just from Mark, but from losing hope. Jack turned his hand to hold hers. No, he replied, eyes softening. You and Noah saved me too. Emily's breath caught as she stared at him, emotion welling in her eyes. Later, as they finished dinner, Rex moved to the door and lay down, his body curled comfortably as he watched his little pack gathered around the table. The wind howled lightly outside, brushing cold air against the windows, but inside, warmth radiated from every corner of the diner. This place, once a simple business for a man trying to outrun loneliness, had become a real home. Emily watched Noah laugh, Jack smile, and Rex's quiet watchfulness as she realized something profound. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were building a new life. Together. In life, miracles rarely arrive with bright lights or angels descending from the sky. Most of the time, they come quietly, through a warm meal, a safe place to rest, a stranger who opens a door, or a single act of courage when everything feels dark. Some people call these moments luck, but those who believe know better. These moments are God's gentle way of reminding us that He sees us, He hears us, and He never leaves us to walk through our storms alone. For Emily and Noah, the miracle wasn't thunderous or dramatic. It came in the form of a Marine who refused to look the other way, a loyal German shepherd who guarded them like family, and a community that stepped in when fear tried to take over. God placed the right people in their path at the exact moment they needed them most. And for Jack, the miracle was quieter still, healing arriving not through words, but through the love of a mother and her brave little boy who brought life back into a heart he thought was long broken. The truth is simple. Sometimes God sends angels from heaven, and sometimes He sends them wearing aprons in a diner, with calloused hands and a tired smile. Sometimes He sends them in the shape of a gentle child. Sometimes He sends them in the form of a dog who refuses to move from a door when danger is near. Wherever you are, whatever you are carrying, pain, exhaustion, loneliness, or hope, remember this. God is still writing your story. He is still sending help, still opening doors, still guiding your steps. You are not alone. You have never been alone. So keep doing good, even when no one sees. Keep showing kindness, even when it feels small, because you never know whose prayer you might be answering or whose miracle you might become. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who may need a reminder that God still works through people every day. Comment below where you're watching from, so we can pray for your city and your family. And if you'd like more stories of hope, healing, and God's goodness, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. May God bless you, protect you, and surround your home with peace and light. Amen.